Today, we're diving into Michel Foucault's History of Sexuality. It's a book that flips our modern understanding of sex completely on its head. It argues that our obsession with talking about sex isn't a sign that we're free, but actually a very clever, very sophisticated form of control. Foucault kicks things off with this one little phrase, "We other Victorians." And it's brilliant because it immediately taps into a story we all think we know. The idea that we've inherited this stuffy, sexually repressed past, and that our whole modern world is this long, hard fight for liberation from it. And this is the basic plot of that story, right? We imagine some earlier time, maybe the 17th century, where things were a bit more open, shameless talk, direct gestures. But then, boom, the 19th century hits, and it's like a great shutdown. Sex gets locked away inside the married couple's home, its only job is to make babies, and everything else is met with what Foucault calls a decree of interdiction, inexistence, and mutism. Basically, a great silence falls over the land. So, for the last few hundred years, the common wisdom has been that power works like a giant censor. Its main job is just to say no to sex, forbid it, pretend it doesn't exist, and just shush anyone who tries to talk about it. This whole idea, this is what Foucault calls the repressive hypothesis. Okay, but here's where Foucault just throws a wrench in the whole machine. He looks at this entire story that we're so comfortable with and asks a really radical question. What if this narrative of repression isn't the truth at all? What if it's actually part of the very power it claims to be describing? So instead of asking if we've been repressed, Foucault flips the question around. He asks, why are we so obsessed with telling this story? Why do we get such a charge out of declaring how repressed we are and how bravely we're fighting against it? Suddenly, the focus isn't on the act of repression anymore, but on why we talk so much about repression. All right, let's get into Foucault's first big counter-argument. He says what really happened wasn't a great silencing at all. In fact, it was the exact opposite. An absolute explosion of talk. Yeah, far from being some forbidden topic you couldn't mention, sex became the subject of this massive, relentless conversation. Foucault argues that our modern society literally dedicated itself to talking about sex, to analyzing it, categorizing it, and producing just endless amounts of knowledge about it. And this wasn't just idle chatter. Power actually built specific machines to make people talk. You had the church demanding these incredibly detailed confessions about the smallest flicker of desire. Then government started treating sex as a national resource, something to manage for the health of the population. Schools became totally obsessed with the problem of kids' sexuality. And of course, medicine rolled in and invented a whole science to study every last bit of it. Now, to see how this actually worked on a human level, Foucault gives us this incredible little example of a farmhand named Jouy. Jouy's story is just a perfect illustration of Foucault's point. He was involved in some minor sexual play with a young girl, the kind of thing that in another era might have been handled with a slap on the wrist locally, if that. But in 1867, this tiny little event sets off a massive institutional firestorm. The mayor, the police, and especially the doctors all descend on him. His actions are completely transformed into an object of intense scientific discussion, and it ends with him being locked up for life. Power didn't silence his act. It amplified it into a huge scientific case study. So this is the crucial point. The new strategy of power wasn't to forbid sex. It was to frame sex as the essential secret about who we are. It's this deep, dark truth that we have to constantly dig up, confess, and analyze. By treating sex like a secret, power makes us desperate to talk about it. And that leads to an even more radical idea. All of this talk wasn't just for observation. Foucault says it was productive. It didn't just analyze the sexualities that were already there. It was actively creating new ones. See, the goal of this new power wasn't to just stamp out every sexual act that didn't lead to making a baby. No. Instead, it was to make all these other peripheral sexualities visible, to give them names, to put them in boxes, and to attach them to specific types of people. Why? Because that makes them way easier to manage and control. And here we see that critical shift in action. Under the old system of law, a sodomite was just someone who committed a forbidden act. But in the 19th century, medicine and psychiatry invent a new character, the homosexual. And this isn't just a person who does something, it's a whole new species of person. Suddenly, their sexuality is their deep, essential identity. It's their personality, their biology, their psychology, all of which can now be studied. And it wasn't just the one. Psychiatry created this whole population of new sexual species, slapping these bizarre Latin names onto behaviors to turn them into permanent identities. Power wasn't saying, stop doing that. It was saying, you are that, and now we can study and manage what you are. Foucault calls this the perverse implantation. So, if power isn't just a big cosmic no, then what is it? Well, Foucault argues that the West developed a very unique way of producing truth about sex, a special kind of power that's all tangled up with knowledge. He calls it scientia sexualis. And he contrasts this with what he calls an ars erotica, or an art of love, which you might find in other cultures. In an ars erotica, knowledge about sex comes from pleasure itself, and the goal is to make that pleasure even more intense. But in the West's scientia sexualis, the science of sex, truth isn't found in pleasure. It's extracted from individuals through the act of confession. The confession. This is the central engine of this whole new power system. It's this ritual where you are obligated to tell the truth about yourself to some authority figure, a priest, a doctor, a psychiatrist, and in the very act of telling your truth, you become a subject who can be known, analyzed, and ultimately governed. This drive to confess, Foucault says, has become so fundamental to who we think we are that we don't even see it as power anymore. We've totally internalized it. We actually believe that telling our deepest, darkest sexual secrets is an act of freedom, the one true path to discovering our authentic selves. And here it is, the final, brilliant, mind-bending twist. The repressive hypothesis. That whole story that we are repressed and we have to liberate ourselves by speaking the truth of our sex, that's not a challenge to this system. It is its ultimate achievement. It's the story that makes us willingly line up to confess our secrets to power, all while believing we're rebels fighting against it. So that leaves us with this deeply unsettling question. If our most basic ideas about our own sexual identity and our own freedom are all tangled up in these centuries-old mechanisms of power and control, what does it even mean to be liberated? It's a question that really challenges us to rethink everything we thought we knew about our most intimate selves.